Morning.
Morning.
I feel like Steve up here with my fancy schmancy tablet up here. So it's a great day to be in God's house. Amen.
Amen.
So a few weeks ago, I'm sitting downstairs, sitting in my chair. I'm listening to an audio book and playing on my phone. And I hear bang, crash, boom, clatter from upstairs directly above me, which just so happens to be Jason, my 5-year-old's bedroom. So I don't hear any screaming. I feel like I'm okay, I don't have to run up the steps. So I head up the steps and I get there and I see he has a bin of toys that he's dumping out on his bed, and they are falling onto the floor amongst every other toy that he owns. The room is a complete mess. I say, Jason, what are you doing? He says, I'm playing, Daddy. I said, well, you need to clean up this mess. I said, I can't clean it up, I'm playing. I'm playing with this stuff, I'm playing. I said, well, you need to clean up whatever you're not playing with right now. He says, but Daddy, I don't know how. There's too much, I don't know how to do it. I said, yeah, you know how to do it, buddy. I said, why don't you just start with the Legos? Just pick up the Legos first, and then we'll work on the next thing. And he says, I'm just a kid, Daddy. I'm just a kid, I can't do that, there's too many of them. Well, with a little guidance and help from Mommy and Daddy, eventually we got his room somewhat presentable. But then as I'm preparing for today, and I'm thinking, all those excuses are the exact same excuses that I use when God tells me to do something, and I either don't feel it or I'm arguing with God. Every single one of them are excuses that I've made when God's called me to do something. What was his first excuse? Daddy, I'm playing with it. I'm playing with this. I can't clean up, I'm playing. How does that sound for an adult? Hey, I'm doing this. You don't want to use me because I'm doing this over here. I look back years ago when God was pushing me towards a role of leadership. I'm arguing with God. I say, at work, I've probably got the foulest mouth of anyone there. I'm telling the dirtiest jokes. I think I actually quoted scripture to God when I'm arguing with him. I said, hey, look, in Ephesians 4:29, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. Hey, look, I'm not doing that. I can't do what you're asking me to do. I can't be a leader. I got to fix that before I ever do anything. Well, God didn't let up. He just, he kind of nudged me and reminded me of Saul, who later became Paul. He said, read Acts. I said, okay. Let's see what Acts has. I'm sure I can keep finding some excuses. So I'll get to Acts chapter 7, where Stephen had just given his speech to the Sanhedrin. And afterwards, they stoned him. And Saul was there at the time. We start in Acts chapter 8, verses 1 through 3. Saul was one of the witnesses, and he agreed completely with the killing of Stephen. A great wave of persecution began that day, sweeping over the church in Jerusalem. And all the believers, except the apostles, were scattered through the regions of Judea and Samaria. Some devout men came and buried Stephen with great mourning. But Saul was going everywhere to destroy the church. He went from house to house, dragging out both men and women to throw them into prison. Moving on to chapter 9, verses 1 and 2. Meanwhile, Saul was uttering threats with every breath and was eager to kill the Lord's followers. So he went to the high priest. He requested letters addressed to the synagogues in Damascus, asking for their cooperation in the arrest of any followers of the way he found there. He wanted to bring them, both men and women, back to Jerusalem in chains. Thinking, this is someone I can sort of relate. God should strike him down right now. I got nothing on this jerk. No way, no how. There's no way God could use him. There's no way God's going to use me. I'll keep reading. Okay. Verses 3 through 9. As he was approaching Damascus on this mission, a light from heaven suddenly shone down around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. And the voice replied, "I am Jesus, the one you are persecuting. Now get up and go into the city, and you'll be told what you must do." The men with Saul stood speechless, for they heard the sound of someone's voice, but saw no one. Saul picked himself up off the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he was blind. So his companions led him by the hand to Damascus. He remained there blind for 3 days and did not eat or drink. So at this point in the story, I'm putting myself in Saul's shoes, except I'm using my own personal perspective. I'm saying, yeah, I'm getting what I deserve. I've been killing these people, now I'm blind. I'm sitting here, I can't even eat or drink. You know, God's waiting to punish me. I'm sure he's going to punish me. And then Ananias just strengthens that argument. Verses 10 through 14. Now there was a believer in Damascus named Ananias. The Lord spoke to him in a vision, calling, "Ananias." "Yes, Lord," he replied. The Lord said, "Go over to Straight Street, to the house of Judas. When you get there, ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul. He is praying to me right now. I have shown him a vision of a man named Ananias coming in and laying hands on him so he can see again." "But Lord," exclaimed Ananias, "I've heard many people talk about the terrible things this man has done to the believers in Jerusalem. And he's authorized by the leading priests to arrest everyone who call upon your name." Ha, God! See, no one else thinks I'm worthy either. I bet God agrees with that. You know, I'm not worthy. Saul's not worthy. How could God use a guy like that? You know, everyone knows that this guy is a complete jerk. No one's gonna ever believe anything. But in verse 15, "But the Lord said, 'Go, for Saul is my chosen instrument to take my message to the Gentiles, and to kings as well as to the people of Israel.'" Oh, well, I guess it looks like saying that my behavior is an excuse for not following God just doesn't quite cut it, huh? Just like Jason there, I'm going to have to admit defeat on that front and move on to another excuse. Because apparently, God's already forgiven us for everything we've done, and it doesn't matter what we're doing. It matters that we listen to him and follow him, and then he's got control there. So maybe I can't use my behavior as an excuse anymore. So what was the next excuse that Jason made? "I don't know how. There's too much." Don't get me wrong. Jason knows how to clean up his toys. He's done it enough times. But I don't think he knew where to start. There was too much. He was overwhelmed. He was anxious. "I don't know how." Well, for me, for a long time, even after I had the realization that, you know, I don't have to worry about, I don't have to fix myself before I follow God. It's, you know, fixing yourself before you go to God is like breaking your leg and trying to set it before you call 911.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
I didn't need to fix myself, but I realized that. But still, I kept telling myself and God that, yeah, I have too much going on to do what you're pushing me towards. I have too much going on. You know what? I'm not good enough. There's way better people out there. I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. I don't know. What if someone asks me a question I don't know? I don't have the answer. It's going to be worse. They're going to be worse off after they talk to me. I'm not good at convincing people. Come on. I'd rather just sit in my chair than go talk to people. And, you know, and in all reality, God, I'm just comfortable where I am. I don't want to go do anything. I don't want to waste my free time doing something that, like I said before, I'm not going to convince anybody. You know, sometimes I even stutter. You know, when I'm getting nervous, I just can't get the words out right. Well, you think God was like, okay, you don't have to do it? No. He says, how about Moses? So I said, what about Moses? He says, go to Exodus. So I'm like, all right, I bet you Moses has some good arguments. I'm sure I could figure a way out of this still. So I'm reading through Exodus. I get into Exodus 3, and Moses is watching his father-in-law's sheep. And he sees this bush. It's on fire, but it's not burning up. It's just like these red LED lights on a bush out there. It's on fire, but no, it's not going anywhere. It's on forever. So he gets pretty curious, and he goes up to the bush, and God talks to him. And very quickly, he realizes that this is God who is talking to him. Verse 10 and 11, God says, "Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people, Israel, out of Egypt." But Moses protested to God, "Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt?" See, God, Moses gets it. He's nobody. He's not good enough. I'm not good enough. If Moses, who everybody knows his name, I mean, the guy wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. If Moses isn't good enough, then how am I good enough? God answered in verse 12, "I will be with you." Okay, well, I guess it doesn't matter if I'm good enough. I need to find another excuse because God's going to be with me. Who cares if I'm good enough? God's going to be there to make sure that I can do everything I need to do. I bet Moses can still get out of it. I better keep looking and see if he's got anything else that I can use to not have to do what God's telling me to do. Verse 13, but Moses protested, "If I go to the people of Israel and tell them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' they'll ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what should I tell them?" I see, God. Moses gets it again. I don't have the answers. What if someone asks me a question that's too hard? I don't have the answers. You should have asked Pastor Steve to do it. Well, in verse 14, God replied to Moses, "I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel. I am has sent you." Oh. Okay, so you'll give me the answers? I don't have to have all the answers. You're going to give them to me? Fair enough. But I see Moses isn't on his way to Egypt yet. I'm sure he had a better argument. Just getting there. So we move on to chapter 4, verse 1. But Moses protested again. What if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if they say, "The Lord never appeared to you"? No, and Moses, he's right. I'm not equipped to convince people that God has sent me to tell them what he wants them to do or give them his word. I'm not equipped. I don't have the tools. I can't convince people. Verses 2 through 9. See what God says back to him. Then the Lord asked him, "What's that in your hand?" "A shepherd's staff," Moses replied. "Throw it down on the ground," the Lord told him. So Moses threw down the staff, and it turned into a snake. Moses jumped back. Then the Lord told him, "Reach out and grab its tail." Now, I was Moses in this case. I'd feel a little leery about grabbing that snake's tail. I'm not the crocodile hunter or anything. No, thank you. But I guess if I was in the presence of God, I'd probably listen to him and go ahead and grab that snake's tail. So Moses grabs it and it turns back into a shepherd's staff in his hand. "Perform the sign," the Lord told him. "Then they'll believe that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, really has appeared to you." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Put your hand inside your cloak." So Moses put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out again, his hand was white as snow with a severe skin disease. "Now, put your hand back into your cloak," the Lord said. So Moses put his hand back in, and when he took it out again, it was as healthy as the rest of his body. Now that would be, I don't know, that would be pretty scary. You pull your hand out first, and it's a mess. But then God has him put his hand back in his cloak and pull it out again. And it's perfectly clean. The Lord said to Moses, "If they do not believe you and are not convinced by the first miraculous sign, they will be convinced by the second sign. And if they don't believe you or listen to you even after these 2 signs, then take some water from the Nile River and pour it out on dry ground. When you do, the water from the Nile will turn to blood on the ground." So let me get this straight, God. I can't do this myself, and you're going to give me the tools to succeed. Okay, so I don't have to know it. You're going to tell me. I don't have to be good enough because you're with me. Now you're going to help me convince people. You're going to give me the tools. But you forget, God. My brain and my mouth, they're not linked. I can't get the words out right. I stutter. Sometimes I only speak in half sentences. Most of the time I only speak in half sentences. How am I going to do what you're asking me to do? Verse 10, but Moses pleaded with the Lord, "Oh Lord, I'm not very good with words." Heard that one before. "I never have been, and I'm not now, even though you've spoken to me." I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. Yeah, see, God? Moses to the rescue again. I can't do it. I can't do it. Verses 11 and 12, then the Lord asked Moses, "Who makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether people speak or do not speak, hear or do not hear, see or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say." Now, shoot. You have an answer for everything, don't you, God? But then Moses again pleaded, "Lord, please send anyone else." Yeah, God, he's right. Send someone else. You can send someone else. I'm comfortable. I don't want to give up my free time. I don't want to do it. I guess I'm done with all these other silly excuses. I guess I just don't want to do it. Well, verses 14 through 15. Then the Lord became angry with Moses. "All right," he said. "What about your brother, Aaron, the Levite? I know he speaks well. And look, he's on his way to meet you now. He will be delighted to see you. Talk to him and put the words in his mouth. I will be with both of you as you speak, and I'll instruct you both in what to do." Okay, God, I get it. I get it. This is your task for me. You're making me help. You're going to be with me. You're going to guide me no matter what. Well, I guess I'm down to one last excuse. One last attempt to not do this. Just like Jason was. So what was the last thing he said? He said, "I'm just a kid. I'm just a little kid. How do you expect me to do this? I'm just a kid. I'm nobody. I'm insignificant." This has always been my go-to argument with God. Those other ones are when he's really pushing me. But my go-to argument is, hey, look, I'm in a family where my sister's a missionary. My brother's he's a worship leader with a Christian music label. My parents have been leaders in the church growing up. My mom was the worship leader, and I'm a factory worker. They can all do it. I'm nobody. How am I going to do anything when I have all these great people surrounding me, pastors, elders, all these people who surround me, and I'm just me. I'm not anybody special. God says, how about when I fed the 5,000? I'm like, well, yeah, you fed the 5,000. I know the story. Read it again. Okay, I'll read it again, but I don't see where this is going, God. So John 6, 1 through 10 or 11. After this, Jesus crossed over to the far side of the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Sea of Tiberias. A huge crowd kept following him wherever he went, because they saw his miraculous signs as he healed the sick. Then Jesus climbed a hill and sat down with his disciples around him. It was nearly time for the Jewish Passover celebration. Jesus soon saw a huge crowd of people coming to look for him. Turning to Philip, he asked, "Where can we buy bread to feed these people?" He was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. Philip replied, "Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them." Then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "There's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that with this huge crowd?" "Tell everyone to sit down," Jesus said. So they all sat down on the grassy slopes. The men alone numbered about 5,000. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks to God, and distributed them to the people. Afterward, He did the same with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. See, God? You did it. You fed the 5,000. Your disciples were there. They helped, but that's 12 people you handpicked. I'm 1 in 7.5 billion people. I'm nobody. I'm not one of the 12. What about the boy? What about the boy? Huh. Who was he? I don't know who he was. You mentioned one time in the entire Bible, this boy. Some insignificant character out of history. Probably just some kid playing with his friends. Oh wait. He is just some insignificant kid out of history. But without him listening to you, without him doing what you asked him to do, giving up his lunch, there wouldn't have been that miracle of the 5,000 people being fed. Okay, God, I get it. No more arguments. Now, I've spent a long, long time, years of my life making these arguments to God. And I'm not gonna tell you that I'm done. Because there are still times where God says to do something, and any one of these arguments comes up, and I say, you know what? I can't do it. And it's not just about standing up here and talking to you or going and talking to someone else. It's just about my everyday relationship with Him.
That's right. Come on.
I have these excuses. You know, I'm too busy to do my reading for the day. You know, I'll just pray while I'm driving in the car. I don't need to get up a little bit early to kneel before you and pray. You know, there's nothing better, though, than having a right relationship with God.
Amen.
You have all these excuses. You know, if you feel like you're unworthy, if you feel like you have things that you've done or are doing that should stop you from doing what God's called you to do, remember Saul. Remember Saul. You know, he was the greatest enemy of the early church. He put a lot of early Christians into prison, and they probably died there or were killed or stoned. I mean, he witnessed Stephen being stoned. And when God spoke to him and God turned his life around, he became one of the greatest missionaries of all time. He became someone who really molded the early church. This guy who I'm saying, hey, you know, God should smite me and him because we're not doing what we should. This guy wrote 13 of the books in the New Testament. It doesn't matter what we're doing or what we've done. God has already forgiven it.
Amen.
All we need to do is go with Him and let Him help us. Help us to change what we're doing, and we can do great things for Him.
That's right.
Maybe we feel like we're not good enough. Maybe it's not something we're doing. We're just not good enough. If you feel like you're not good enough to do it, you don't know the answers. You're not good with words. You can't convince people. This isn't what you're good at. Think of Moses. Was Moses feeling like he was good enough? No, he didn't feel good enough. He didn't have the answers. He couldn't convince people. He couldn't talk. And every step of the way, God said, I will be with you. He said, I'm going to tell you what to say. I'm going to give you the tools to succeed. I will put the words into your mouth. But go. Quit saying you don't want to and just go and do it.
Yes. Amen.
What did Moses do? He went. He did what God called him to do. He went to Pharaoh, the most powerful person in Egypt, and succeeded in leading millions of Israelites out of slavery. You know, maybe none of those arguments are really arguments that you're making. Maybe you just feel like you're nobody. Maybe you feel unnoticed. You know, I walked into church this morning and the greeter missed me. No one cares. You know, I wanted to talk to Pastor Steve today, but I missed him. I didn't see him. I'm nobody. I'm insignificant. Well, that little boy, he was just playing with his friends. I'm sure he was just playing with his friends. He might have been there with his parents. He might have been a kid whose house was nearby. Just sees the crowd and is playing with them, and his mom sent him a lunch. But when not Jesus, but one of his disciples, some stranger comes and asks him if he has any food to share, what did he do? He shared it. And out of that, God fed 5,000 men. You add the women and children, I bet you that number is more than double. And what did it say? They all had enough to eat. Because this insignificant nobody, who's mentioned in one sentence in the Bible, did what God asked him to do. He did what God asked him to do. When God asks you to do things, He's asking you because there are amazing things in store for you. You may not see them right then and there, but He's going to use you for awesome, awesome things.
That's right.
So I want to ask you guys right now, if everyone would stand up.